Hey, I remembered. What? All right. So, everyone, welcome to Women in Tech Allies, along with Breaking the Glass. So, we're at Build Your Personal Brand. This has been a long time coming, which just means it's going to be even awesomer than we originally planned. That's all that means. So, Women in Tech Allies is a group that is based in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. And our whole goal is to make the technical field more diverse and inclusive. And so we are, we've been doing this now for, I want to say about 5 years, maybe. We have about 1,700 members locally in the Raleigh-Durham area. We love to do networking events. We do tech talks. We do presentations like this. We collab. And we love to be able to promote and encourage and mentor and provide opportunities for people to make tech more diverse, more inclusive, and much more just overall wonderful. That's what we do. So we we do events pretty much on a monthly basis. For the past year or 18 months, we've been virtual. But hey, maybe in the fall, we might actually do some hybrid events where we do virtual and also in person. We're gonna see. We're gonna see how that goes. And let's see. We do have some awesome sponsors. If you would like to know more about us, we have our website at womenintechallies.com. We have a sponsor page on there that has a list of all the amazing local companies that are helping us with our mission, and they have links to all of their career pages because they're all hiring. So if you're looking for a job, a lot of them are remote too. So no matter where you are, please check out our sponsors. I know they would love to hear from you. They would love to have people apply for the many, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of tech companies are like hiring right now. So that's a thing. And they would love to be able to hear from you. So upcoming events, we have 2 events on the schedule. The next one, hold on, I gotta move. There we go. I had to move a little bar out of the way. Riding the Tech Wave, Getting Ready for Growth in the Triangle will be our July event. Locally for us, Apple just announced that they're moving and putting in a headquarters here. They're already in process of hiring about 3,000 new people in our area. We also have Google opening up in Durham. We have a bunch of other stuff happening, some buyouts happening that are going to cause more jobs. So our local area is really set to have a hiring tech wave. And what we want to do is make sure that people who are from underrepresented backgrounds and diverse backgrounds get a chance to take advantage of that and not just get passed by. So that will be our topic for July. Let's get all of that worked out and get everybody on the right path to success. We want to see that. We want to make sure that that kind of change in our area is good for everyone. So that's going to be the July event. Our August event is Intro Review. We're going to do some key concepts and hands-on building of components. And so that will be our August event, and both will be virtual. We're probably not going to do anything in person until I want to say maybe September or October. But that doesn't mean we can't have fun and learn new things. So there we go. Anyone who's normal to WITA, hey, if there's a shout out or an event or something that you want us to put a shout out on or celebrate with you or just go, woo, you're awesome, please let us know. And let's get started. So I'm going to stop sharing. Hold on. Pause share. Nope. Stop share. There it is. What crazy tech awesomeness. All right. So all that being said, I'm going to pass it off to Elizabeth and Breaking the Glass.
Thank you so much, Susan. Yeah. I love that y'all are doing a shout out campaign. We're doing one as well for Breaking the Glass. Right now we're calling it Elevate, and we're highlighting all the amazing women and allies who have spoken at our events over the past few years as well. So that's been a fun campaign. So I'm glad that y'all are doing one as well. But yeah, before we get started, I just want to say thank you to our speakers, Women in Tech Allies, and Susan for helping bring this conversation to life. We're about to hear from our panelists about how they develop their personal brands, and you can do the same and help that benefit your career. I'm so excited for this amazing conversation. But before we get started, I'd just like to introduce myself for a moment. I'm Elizabeth Lamb. I'm the partnerships manager for Breaking the Glass. We partner with tech companies and candidate communities, tech communities as well, to provide free personalized programming on diversity, inclusion, and women's career development topics. We have provided webinars for our partners like Dell, IBM, Charter Communications. If you'd like to learn more about what we do, or you'd like to collaborate, be a speaker, bring us in to speak for one of your amazing organizations, I'll drop my contact information in the side. I'm actually going to see y'all at the end of the event, but Courtney is going to be our moderator, and she's going to guide us through this amazing discussion. And if you have questions, we'll have time for Q&A. We definitely want to make it a dynamic conversation and impactful for you as well. So now I'll finally let Courtney take it away.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hey guys, super excited to be here and talk about this today. This is actually one of the first topics that was presented at my company when I first started. So it's like something that's always kind of been ingrained in my brain. But little intro. So my name's Courtney Phipps. For now, I just got married, so I'm in the process of changing my last name, but that takes a while, which I just found out. But I am a part of Computer Futures, and Breaking the Glass is one of our partner brands. So I am a Salesforce recruitment consultant, and I pretty much work along the East Coast, but I'm actually from South Carolina, so the Carolinas are near and dear to my heart, which is why I'm super excited to partner with Women in Tech Allies, being able to bring all of this kind of back to the home states makes me super happy. So really excited for this today and our awesome panel. So Evelyn, I will go ahead and pass it over to you for an intro.
Hi everyone, my name is Evelyn Grizzle. I am currently a Salesforce engineer at Litify, which is a legal software company that is built entirely on Salesforce. We are an ISV partner, which is really awesome. I have been a Salesforce developer for 2.5 to 3 years. So I'm really excited to be working at an ISV so early in my career, a lot of which I owe to my own personal branding, which we will get into more in a little bit. I also have a little Salesforce blog. It's called Another Salesforce Blog, which we'll go into a little bit later. So check that out. Back to you, Courtney.
Maricela, if you want to go ahead.
Hey everyone, and happy Wednesday. Excited to be here. I'm Maricela Bodrero, and I'm a corporate and leadership coach, and I specifically work with women in tech that want to advance their career specifically into strategic roles and management positions by claiming their value and stop being underpaid using our methodologies that we teach inside our program. So super excited to be here. I've actually been a coach for a couple years now, and prior to that, I worked for a couple of different companies. American Express, might have known of them, American Express. I worked for a UK-based staffing company, and our clients were Nike, Rolls-Royce was one of our clients, Bank of America was one of our clients as well. I've worked in the semiconductor industry as well. A lot of our clients that we work with are typically looking to transition into a company that's aligned with a product that they can get behind, and really looking for some intentional career pivots that are more mission driven. So if you'd like to connect more, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. Happy to be here.
Perfect. Thanks, Maricela. I'm pretty sure that's all of us. So I will go ahead and get started with some questions. So our first one for you guys. So developing a personal brand can be both a time and monetary commitment. How has investing in a personal brand benefited you? Whoever wants to take it away, go ahead.
Sure. I will start. So the story that I like to tell with another Salesforce blog is that I was really frustrated and I was working on a problem that was like impossible for me to solve. I was working to find a way to interact with legacy Salesforce objects for 2 weeks because they don't play by the normal DML rules. You can't insert, update, upsert them normally like you can with, say, an account or a contact object. So I decided to leave breadcrumbs for the next person to have this issue because I was finding that it was a pretty common issue on Google. It was something that I could not find the answer for. So I decided that I was going to start a blog and put my information out there for the next person to find it. The fun part of the story is I actually maxed out my credit card at 2 a.m. to start this blog, just a little blog on WordPress. And I will say that my little $200 investment paid itself off with dividends. I was recruited for my first position that was attracted. The recruiter was attracted to me because of my blog within probably 6 months. So with a number of blog posts, I was able to transition into a role at Indigo Agriculture, which is a agricultural firm that helps to create value for farmers by increasing the amount of output that farmers are able to produce while decreasing the amount of inputs using biologicals and microbes. And I was working on the Salesforce software for that, interfacing with their marketplace website. So from there, I was recruited to Litify. And like I said, it's a legal software company. It's really exciting. We do a lot of good stuff. I'm actually at the all hands right now, but basically, because I took this investment and started a blog and gambled that $200 on a WordPress subscription for a year and a little email address that has my website on it, I was able to double my salary in the course of 2 years, and I'm now working at a Salesforce ISV. So it's definitely a monetary and time commitment, but it's, for me, it has definitely been worth it to put my information out there, build myself a portfolio, and really get myself out there and just post it on LinkedIn. So that's kind of my story.
Oh, that was perfect. And congrats to all that you've accomplished so far. Seriously, that's amazing. And working with Salesforce people every day, like that just makes me so happy to hear. Maricela, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, so and I'm speaking to, maybe this might resonate with some of those that are participating today, but one of the things that we teach our clients, and one of the themes that consistently comes up, is for a lot of, I think, women in the tech industry, there gets to a point in your career where you start to kind of hit almost like a wall where you don't really know what's next. And the role that you want to do isn't the role that you are currently doing now. And you're not really getting seen for those opportunities, right? So that plays into like personal branding and how do you position yourself for those roles? And so it's really like starting to ask better questions of what is it that I really do want, and taking some time to do some introspection. And that might require, looking at how can I get clear on what it is that I want to do next, what is important to me, what are some of the things that I am excited about, and like what are the things that matter to me, and really looking at how are we aligning your career story and your journey to what's next, because that also plays into how you want to be seen in this world, right? And so when you're talking to decision makers at a director level, a senior vice president level, when you start stepping into more of those strategic roles, you have to start having more deeper level conversations around like some intention behind what it is that you're trying to do next in your career. And so I don't know if that's resonating with anybody, but that's something that comes up a lot for our clients inside of our program. And I think, it might be kind of just some healthy dialogue that we talk about here, and like really the deeper work that's required to really look at how we want to show up in this world and what kind of message do we want to share with those that we're working with and collaborating with in the industry that we're in.
Oh, Evelyn, you're on mute.
Oh, absolutely. I hit mute and then unhit it. But so one of the things that I did when I was starting my Salesforce journey, I don't know if y'all are planner people, but I'm a very big passion planner user. And at the start of every passion planner, I'm not being paid to say this or anything, but like their format really helps me because it's like a page that has little, this is what I want to do in 3 months, 1 year, 5 years, or 3 years and 5 years. So you're able to like draw out your goals and say, this is where I want to be in 3 years. I want to be a mid-level developer in 3 years. I hit that goal. I want to be a senior developer in 5+ years. I hit that goal. And it really helps you break things down into smaller pieces and like, how am I going to make that step from a junior developer to a mid-level developer to a senior developer? So that is something that breaking it down step by step and really planning it out, and especially talking with mentors about it in the process, is very helpful.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for putting that in the chat, because that was literally my next question, was to add that. I am such a planner. So that is extremely helpful, in a really good way to, I think, like set yourself up to actually visualize your goals. You can like, because I'm a visual person, so I like to see myself like actually like getting there. So I think like maybe using that would be like super helpful for visual planners as well. But yeah, thanks for introducing that, Evelyn. I'm gonna love that now.
Yeah, and just a heads up, they actually offer their planner portfolio like pages for free. So it's really good. So just a heads up.
I will be having fun with that later. But okay, so for the next question, does a personal brand need to look like a social media presence, or what other ways do you use like to create a brand? Which I feel like this question is very important with social media now, because I feel like that's what everyone's on. So Maricela, do you want to start off?
Yeah, so personal brand, I think it goes back to like personal, right? And it's making that conscious decision to say, like, again, what is it that I want to share, and really getting clear on what that message is. So I think when it comes to social media, at least like this is what we talk about a lot with our clients that are stepping into more of those like strategic roles and wanting to be seen for more of those management, more of those senior opportunities. There are certain things on LinkedIn that we want to elevate just overall, like just certain things that we want to make sure that are elevated, and like what might that look like, and what are some ways that we can do that. So LinkedIn, number one, we definitely want to be elevating that from like what are the achievements that we have really hit, the milestones, and like what are those quantifiable milestones that we've been able to really hit in our career that we want to share and talk about on LinkedIn, right? Also too, what are some of the ways that we are contributing to our industries? I was just working with a client on this, and she's actually making a transition from being a mid-level developer into cybersecurity. So she's making that transition right now. And this happens a lot for technical individuals, as they want to transition to a different type of technical route, right? And so for her, she doesn't really have an interest in stepping into people management quite yet, but she wants to start really kind of elevating her skill sets in a different way. So she wants to be seen more in that cybersecurity industry and start interacting with those that are in that particular field. And so one of the things that we're starting to work on is like, just how can we start building some champions within that industry that she can start leveraging as mentors, as people that she can go to start building some relationships. One thing we have to remember is, regardless if you're making a career pivot, whether you're making a company change, a team change, whatever season you're in, relationships matter. Like, the relationships that you have directly will tie into the opportunities that you receive, bottom line. So where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10 with your relationships? Because that's all part of personal brand, is like just having access to those relationships, and really, like, are you leveraging that? Are you creating those relationships? Are you putting yourself in opportunities to create those relationships? That all goes back to it. I think with personal brand and like the social media aspect, leveraging LinkedIn, leveraging others that are in the industry. So that's kind of, I guess, my perspective on all that.
Definitely. It is all about those relationships. So especially using LinkedIn, I have gotten my last 2 positions on LinkedIn. Recruiters have reached out to me. If you put your Salesforce certification on your profile, you get several recruiters a day. I'm sure some of y'all are familiar with that, but it's definitely building a relationship and maintaining a relationship with those recruiters, not only the recruiters, but with people that you've worked with and people that you hope to work with in the future. This is something that I actually heard today. I am currently in Brooklyn at the Litify All Hands, and someone came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're Evelyn. I love your LinkedIn content. I was so glad when you started at the company because you post really great stuff and really insightful stuff." And I was like, oh my God, we got them. We got Evelyn on the team. And, that was something that I've never experienced before. Someone coming up to me and saying that I have a meaningful social media presence on LinkedIn, and being able to, take that and use that as leverage to get into positions and higher positions and better paying positions, and just building my career in that way through those relationships. One thing that I also definitely suggest people do is to foster those relationships on LinkedIn by you're able to leave comments and recommendations for people on LinkedIn. So one of the most helpful recommendations that I have gotten was from a previous manager who was one of my trainers when I was at IBM and getting trained by the Blue Wolf team on Salesforce. So one of the things that stands out most about my LinkedIn profile is that recommendation. And I make sure to leave recommendations for my coworkers as well. It's nice when they recommend me as well, but even just leaving recommendations for other coworkers shows that you are able to build those relationships, maintain those relationships, and that you're a pleasant person to work with. So that's one thing that I have found very helpful.
I had a feeling that you were going to mention that because with Salesforce, it honestly is such a huge LinkedIn community. And I'm probably one of those recruiters who has reached out like multiple times a day. But no, you have a really good point with how important like the recommendations are, because I know that's something that when I see on a profile, it stands out. And then engagement as well definitely stands out, and like kind of showing how involved they are with the community. And that gives me like honestly like a lot of confidence knowing like this kind of person before I even speak to them. And I know it's big for Salesforce, and I think like that's something that anyone in tech can kind of take away is how important like LinkedIn is. If anything, I think that one's really going to help because I mean it's literally a profile like for your work. So yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn and posting everything on there. So no, glad you brought that up, Evelyn. Marcel, do you have anything else to add?
So I think one thing about personal branding is it's almost like a two-parter. There is one part where it's the actual like strategy and execution part, which is doing the LinkedIn, building those internal champions, getting the visibility internally, externally. It's like all of those strategy and keeping yourself accountable to actually do it, right? So you have all of that on one side, but then there's this whole other like human side that's happening here that we don't want to gloss over, right? Because what happens to a lot of, I would say, women, I think in general, and this is not something that doesn't happen to men too, but just I think what, at least from what I've experienced with working with my clients, is that it's that feeling of being seen and putting ourselves out there in a very vulnerable way. And that can bring up a lot of internal stuff that's happening. And so it's both have to be working for this to really kind of like to be happening well, because if we're fighting like the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, the like feelings that are coming back from like it not being perfect enough, and like all of these different things that come up, and it's going to be very difficult to execute the strategy parts, right? And if we don't have the strategy parts, maybe we've got like we're managing the self-doubt well, and we're like willing to put ourselves out there imperfectly, but we don't have the strategy part. It's still gonna be hard, right? Like both of those have to be working in parallel. So I just want to like mention that it's like almost like a two-part thing. It's like a strategy part, but then there's also like internal stuff that also has to be managed as well too, and we have to like start having those deeper conversations with ourselves. And it's a level of awareness and consciousness that is a lot of times we kind of just like gloss over. We're like, we know all these things, but we're like, well, but why am I not doing them? So that's all I wanted to add.
Definitely. And with the imposter syndrome and the self-doubt, one thing that I was really in the habit of, especially in my younger, like early 20s, I'm turning 30 this year, so I'm still fairly early in my career, but was negative self-talk. And this is corny, and it's a lot easier to say, stop talking bad about yourself. But truly in my career, being able to say, you know, I am good at this, and learning to talk about myself in a way that's not self-deprecating, but not self-aggrandizing, is like one of the key skills that I've learned, is just finding that balance between like bragging on myself a little bit and telling the truth about what I did. And there's a nice line in between where you are truthfully telling the whole story of what you did at your past position, while also putting yourself in a very good light. And the best way that I have gotten to do that is just not talking bad about myself at work. Like, we all have bad days, we all mess up, but really focusing on those bad days when, like, you know, I've had positions that were, you know, we've all had positions where it's kind of like a drain, you know, we've all had those bad positions, but like really focusing on the positive of those positions. Like, I built this really cool system. I did this. I learned so much at this position, and turning it into that positive. This is what I learned. This is who I connected with. This is what I was able to do, instead of that negative self-talk. Really, really helps with that imposter syndrome and the self-doubt.
Sorry, actually, one of the first like videos that they showed us when I first started, which of course was a TED Talk, which I don't watch very often, but it was on kind of the imposter syndrome. And like the one line that's always stuck with me is instead of saying like fake it until you make it, like fake it until you become it, which like that one line, I don't know, kind of reminds me to like keep going and kind of pushing myself. So it kind of goes along with that. If you're ever feeling imposter syndrome, just remember like fake it until you become it. And that's something that you'll eventually like start to see yourself like getting there. And then one day you're like, okay, like I did this for so long and now here I am. And I think that's like a really good mindset to have. Do either of you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Courtney, something that I think just coming up in this dialogue around the imposter syndrome, and just really it's about like owning your story. And a lot of times I think too, as like, and I don't know if this resonates with anybody in the group, but a lot of times we can get caught up in this like perfectionism trap where we're like trying to like show up in a way that we want others to see us, or we're avoiding having to show up in a way that we want people to not see us. And that can also happen too. So what I would encourage the group is to think about, what are the stories that you are not fully owning right now that have played in your career? So for example, one of the things that this is like an exercise I take my clients through, but like one of the things that we talk about a lot is, I have a client right now. She actually has had an 8-month like career gap on her resume. Okay. So she has an 8-month career gap on her resume right now. She sees it as a gap, as like a negative thing, as something that's like constantly coming up for her that's she's insecure about, essentially. And we've all been there where there's like something on our resume or something about our journey. Maybe we haven't always worked in the tech field. Maybe we worked in a completely different industry before we transitioned into tech. That might be somebody's story too. And there's a level of there's some level of being aware of like what are we not fully owning right now in our career story, and what are we like avoiding sharing. And so like one of the things that she is struggling with right now is like trying to really own that for these past 8 months, like this is what has been happening and kind of what's been going on with my life, in a very like vulnerable but still very professional way, to like show and not only display vulnerability, but also show that like we're all human and our career journeys are multidimensional. And so there's just things that come up and happen. Like sometimes we have to take time off from work to care for like family members, or maybe we needed to like work for the startup and then we realized it wasn't for us. Or maybe we went and worked, somewhere for like 3 months and it was like, you know what, show, and we had to pivot quickly, and like we're trying to like avoid talking about that on our resume. Like I don't know if this is resonating with anyone, but those moments come up in our career, and instead of like avoiding it, let's weave that into the career journey, because the thing about it is like it's going to come up in the interview anyways. Like just own it. And like part of that is like internal stuff that has to happen in order for us to really step into owning that story. So that's what I would encourage the audience is like, what story are you avoiding, and what story are you like not like fully owning right now?
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Evelyn.
Oh, I was just gonna say, as a direct example of this, like I said, I'm turning 30 this year. I just received my bachelor's of science, actually 2 months ago. I am a survivor of domestic violence, and that derailed my career and my schooling. And I have had the misfortune of having it come up in an interview before. It was a really hard interview for me to do. It was a SMART interview where they ask, how is middle school? How is high school? What would your favorite teacher in kindergarten have said about you? And it was something that came up, and it was really hard for me to emotionally prepare for that interview, for example. So I knew that it was going to be a tough interview going into it, but I wasn't expecting it to come up like that. So and there have been times where this has come up in my career, just because it's people are like, you were a barista 5 years ago. What are you doing as a software engineer? And I'm like, I don't know, we'll find out. But it's really like, being able to own that story though, and like, especially posting about it on LinkedIn, which people have various like levels of comfort with their own stories. And this is something I talk about a lot in my personal life. And I decided to post about it on LinkedIn when I got my bachelor's degree. Like, hey, I've seen some really inspiring posts from other women and femmes on LinkedIn, and I decided to make a post like that. And that is, part of my personal brand is that I am resilient and a fighter now. So that's something that like, it's really easy to get down and be like, I had this gap in my career. I had this series of jobs that don't look like they fit together, but the thing that ties every position I've ever had together is my soft skills, my people skills, and data. So increasing sales in a coffee shop, for example, is a lot of data. There's supply chain management, there's people skills, there's all these things I can connect directly to my current career. I was a undergraduate research assistant in the Office of Management and Budget, and I did like spreadsheets and database software and like SAS. And I'm able to weave together this part of my career that it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of writing stuff down and really poring over my resume and saying, how do I connect these things? But once you learn how to make those connections, it's really, really beneficial. So yeah.
Like you guys, Evelyn, congrats on your bachelor's. I know how hard and difficult that is, especially like doing it a lot later. So congrats, like that's so awesome. And I'm right there with you. I started actually in the medical field and pretty much took probably about 4 months off to move across the country with my now husband. We moved across the country twice. And I worked part-time during that. And I think when I got to where I am now, I was like, how do I explain like working part-time for like a few months while I was like in the middle of changing careers. But I started to kind of own it because that's how I realized like I'm good at sales and I'm good to talking to people. So I think it's all about like taking that situation and just looking at it through like a positive lens and kind of using it as a learning point. So it's never something to hide. It's always something to learn from and be positive about. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Maricela. It was awesome. But for our next question, so part of establishing a brand is to position yourself as an authority or thought expert. What are the first steps of establishing credibility within your space?
Definitely build those relationships with the folks around you. If your coworkers don't take you seriously, then it's going to be hard to convince someone on LinkedIn to take you seriously. And I struggle with the words take seriously because there's like a whole concept of like, being taken seriously is not necessarily the right phrasing for that, because there's this whole like very white, very male perception of what is and is not professional, for example. But like if you go in and make yourself known as a thought expert in your office and then build those connections, branch out, people will start to vouch for you, and you can really like go a long way doing that. When I was at IBM, I went from like barely knowing how to code to like being a leader of my Salesforce practice. And, from there have been recruited for jobs and like promoted and all this good stuff coming because I was able to impress my boss and go through this. And so definitely establish credibility where you are at, and then branch out.
So I love this question, and there's two options here that to my answer to this question. So one option is if you are trying to build more champions internally, if you're trying to promote within and really make some strides and larger leaps at your current role. Again, going back to the relationships, but also we have to make sure that you're getting that visibility and making sure that you are getting in rooms where your work is being noticed by the right people, right? And a lot of times the mistake that I see happen is that we think that our manager is, as long as our manager knows what we're doing, like we're good. And that's simply not true. And we have to really ensure, and sometimes our managers don't even know how to, sometimes our managers don't even know how to professionally grow us and how to professionally get us the visibility that we truly need to be able to grow beyond our current role that we're in now. So oftentimes we assume that our managers like kind of doing the work behind the scenes, and a lot of times that doesn't really happen. We have to take ownership on really driving that vehicle. So making sure that we're getting the visibility, that we're getting on important initiatives at our company that is going to give us more visibility into some of the senior stakeholders, giving us opportunities to work with some of those. So like if you are for example, if you're in a role right now as an individual contributor and you really want to start being perceived as a more strategic leader, someone who is making decisions, not just executing the tactical pieces of a job, but actually making strategic decisions and like really stepping into a role where you're like delegating responsibilities and really kind of doing some big picture thinking. That's where we have to really start looking at how you can like intentionally put yourself on teams, on projects, on initiatives, where you're able to do that. And that might mean like, let's say somebody's on paternity or maternity leave, like, are you volunteering for stepping into their role temporarily? You know, are you doing some, you know, shadowing, some work shadowing for other teams? Are you volunteering to like take on a project that gives you that exercising of being in a role where you're, you know, taking lead on something? Perceived value is really, really important in this industry. And on the flip side, if you are trying to pivot into a new company, that requires a different approach, right? So one of the things that I've talked about and shared in other speaking events I've done, and you know, one thing that we take our clients through is like a 30, 60, 90-day plan. Like when you're stepping into interviews, showing them like, this is the plan of what the 30-day, like the first 30 days of hiring, this is what that's going to look like, right? That's creating trust, because that's creating like, what should we expect if you were to step into this role? Like, what should we expect of you, right? And not just 30 days, but what does 60 days look like? What does 90 days look like? Especially when you're transitioning into management roles where you're going to have to be responsible for a whole team, right? And so they want to know like, what can we expect from you? What are the things that you're going to do immediately? What are the priorities that you're going to do by day 60, by day 90? What is your plan? And it makes it really nice because when you're interviewing, the panel or the hiring leader, sometimes we assume that verbally talking about what it is that we can offer them, we're assuming that cognitively they're taking it in and understanding. Sometimes that's not always the case. There's different learning styles, there's different communication styles. We don't know which one is resonating with them most. So as a candidate, it's important that we're hitting all of those. And so a 30, 60, 90 plan is really great because it's a document that the manager can now like look at visually. Maybe they're more of a visual like learner or someone that takes in communication just like more visually, and they can take it to their senior leadership team and say, hey, this is the individual we're hiring. This is their plan, right? I would say like 90% of the candidates that come in interviews don't have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. So I don't know if that's helpful. Feel free to drop in the chat if that was helpful or if there's like additional questions around that, but just to kind of add some perspective on that.
I was going to say really quickly, that's actually one of the questions that I encourage my candidates to ask on interviews. I like to ask them, ask the manager, like what is like your deliverables or what is it going to look like in this position, like 30, 60 days out? Because that can also kind of allow you to visualize yourself in the role. But it can also like help to visualize like them visualizing you in the role. So I think also doing that, like making sure to ask that in an interview is a really good way to kind of like figure out if this is like the right thing for you and if you're going to like it. So that was a really good point. Evelyn, anything to add on that?
Just from the chat, how to create that plan if you don't know about the company. I always like to do a lot of research on the company. Like I go a little bit probably overboard, but it's worked for me so far. I Google everything. Sometimes I'll read financial reports, try to find out who competitors are. If I'm given the names of my interviewers, I will look them up on LinkedIn so I know what questions to ask them specifically. Like, I'm not going, for example, if I'm interviewing with a solutions architect, I'm not going to ask them about the financials of the company. I'm going to ask them, how would you want, like, what are your ticket requirements for this, or something like that. And I I like asking what are the expectations for me in this role in the first 60 days, because it not only helps me mentally prepare for the role, it helps them see me in the role possibly, but it also makes sure that I'm signing up for something that I want to be doing, because, if I am, there's a lot of roles that are, especially in the junior to mid-level range for Salesforce developers, that are more admin heavy or more developer heavy. So it's really good to suss out, like, what is this going to be doing? So it's really helpful to be able to ask those questions.
Yeah, that's a perfect point, especially like knowing that some of those job descriptions are a little misleading sometimes. It's always a really good thing to figure out on the interview. So that was a really good point. But I want to make sure we get through a few more of these questions. So the next one, a personal brand should reflect where you currently are in your career. What are some tips for those who might not be ready to be fully authentic on their brand?
Could I just ask like a clarifying question on that? When you say they're not ready to be authentic to their brand, could you just like define that for the group so I just have more clarity on that?
I think like fully authentic. I mean, I could definitely see two ways, as in like you're not ready to fully commit to like what you think your personal brand is, or like you're not ready to, I guess, like put yourself out there completely yet. So I guess like you can take it whichever way you think is best.
Okay. Um, well, when I think of not ready, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is like asking those deeper level questions of like why, and really thinking about what are some steps we can do to get clear on the story that we want to tell. Because whether or not like at a conscious or subconscious level, like we are telling ourselves a narrative about ourselves every single day, whether we want to or not. Like we are, like cognitively, that is happening in our brains. And we get to decide what that narrative and that story is. So I think one, it's becoming aware of what is the story that you're telling today. What does that look like? And like taking some time to journal that out. One of the exercises that I gave my clients actually on our call today is, and I'll just share it with the group if that's cool. So one of the things that you can do, like, first of all, journaling is a great like tool and a great way. Like if you struggle with being able to articulate words to like feelings and like what you're trying to say, and just kind of coming up with words for that and really getting clear on what problem you're trying to solve and really what you're trying to communicate. Journaling is a great way, but also getting more clear on asking yourself better questions. So for example, like one way you can kind of start doing some introspection on the personal story that you're trying to tell and really what you're trying to communicate, and maybe you struggle to get it out, is you can simply start with looking at a couple key questions. Number one is you can look at, what do I not want people to see me as? That's like question number one. Question number two is, what do I not want people to know? Question number three is, what am I afraid of being? Number four is, what feeling do I want to avoid? A lot of times the things that we're avoiding the most require a lot of energy to continue to keep getting repressed. Does that make sense? Like the more that we avoid, the more energy we're putting into like repressing that like narrative, that story, that message that we want to share. So it's important that we start just being even self-aware and like conscious of what is that message that we're consistently like trying to avoid sharing or like not wanting to talk about. And where can we start doing some like deeper level of work to really like get that out? A couple different things, like therapy is amazing. I'm a huge advocate for like mental health, therapy, really getting to the emotional root of things. Also too, I'm a very spiritual person, and a lot of times our clients are very spiritual. So energy work, life coaching, shadow work is really great. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about this, you know, in addition to therapy. Also, you know, again, looking at some, you know, tools like journaling and really just, you know, trying to heal some of those things that might be just be repressing, that you're keeping down, that's like you're struggling to put words to, because like a lot of feelings come up when you start sharing very personal things. So once we do the deeper work, we are more likely to step into wanting to be seen by the world. So I hope that makes sense.
Definitely. So I basically, this all goes back to imposter syndrome and self-doubt. It's never too early to start building a portfolio. This is something that I started my blog very, very early into my Salesforce career. And I it's never too early to start building that portfolio. In like my high school AP computer science class, they had us build a little HTML website. And, you know, that is something that you can show to employers to say, hey, I know how to do HTML. I know how to do CSS. Like, here's some basic styling. One of the questions that was asked in the chat is like some details that, you know, you can put in a WordPress blog to start building that portfolio, especially in the tech sector. Whether you're going for tech support or, you know, writing code, being a Salesforce admin, definitely post stuff that's relevant to the job that you want. Whether that is something that is going to be, you know, something like what I was talking about with how to manipulate legacy Salesforce objects, or something that is deeper, like this is a Lightning Web component that I built. And whatever your skill level, you can start doing that. Just don't doubt yourself. That I know it's hard, it's easy for me to say that, but there are people who are going to learn from what you put out there. And one of my favorite kind of celebrity Salesforce recruiters on LinkedIn, Christopher Hopper, often posts like, you know, how are you contributing to the community? How are you, what information are you putting out there? Are you going to, what are you teaching other people today? And someone will definitely learn from what you have to put out there, whether you're at a beginner level or an advanced level. So definitely, if you're not feeling authentic in your brand, or you're not sure what your brand is yet, take some time to suss it out. And you know, definitely journal on what Marcella was saying. Make sure that you are projecting who you want to be, both in the workplace and out, but also don't be afraid to start building that portfolio.
Do you have anything to add to that, Maricela?
I think the only other thing I was going to add was just that this is a journey. Like you're not going to have it figured out in one day, in 2 weeks. It's a journey, especially when you start getting to new levels in your career. You really want to start being more intentional with where you want to go next and some of the goals that you want to do. And I think the one thing I just want to leave with the group is that it's okay to just play in your career. It's okay to have some adventure in your career. It's okay to try something and like it completely like doesn't go the way that it was planned, but then it like shifts you into totally new direction than you thought it was going to. And like always just remember that life is happening for you, it's not happening to you. And a lot of times it can feel like that, especially when like work gets really, really stressful with like the demands of like fires being fired at you all the time. And like, just like, I know this to be true for my clients, like they oftentimes are like the go-to on their teams for things, and they're oftentimes the subject matter experts, they're top performing, they're high achievers. And so a lot of times it's like you get so like you get inundated with just constantly having like, you know, people needing you all the time at work and feeling like the demands are just nonstop. And so I just want to encourage the group that it's okay to take some time to really think about what you want next and to just play and like have some fun. Like you work at your jobs 40, 50, 60-hour weeks, like you better gotta enjoy it, right? Like, so I just hope that helps. That's all I wanted to add.
Evelyn, anything else before we move on to the next one? Perfect. No, I think with that, I honestly, like when I started this position almost 2 years ago, I had no idea what my personal brand was. I was completely clueless. And when one of my now teammates did a presentation on it, I was like, well, I have no idea what mine is. And through this position, I think, you know, being self-reflective and really thinking about like, what do you want to like tell the world and like, how do you plan to show that? But also like, what do you, I guess like traits that you enjoy about yourself, like through work. Cause I know like I love being like honestly someone who has everything kind of together and organized. And that kind of helps me be driven and ambitious. And so like that's something I always want to put forward. And so like just thinking about like some of the things you like to do or like, you know, you like to show in your work, like those are the type of things that you want to take forward and kind of move on with your personal brand. So yeah, sometimes you just need a lot of time to be self-reflective and yeah, it's whatever it takes to get you there. But for the next question, for women and allies in STEM, what are some ways people can communicate their value beyond their technical aptitude?
So this one for me, I have participated in a lot of ERGs and employee resource groups, including starting several. So that shows a lot of organizational skills that are applicable in the office and a lot of positions. There's also a lot of, you know, there's not a lot of emphasis on soft skills in tech. And that's something that, you know, women and people who are socialized as women are given a lot of. You know, we tend to have better soft skills than a lot of engineers that I have met. But that's something that like you really have to cultivate too. Like I was in a seminar recently on emotional quotients and emotional intelligence, and being able to read a room, being able to get information and translate it into a technical description based on who you're talking to, or a non-technical description. Like for example, if I'm talking to a friend of mine, I often get asked, like, I'll be like, yeah, I'm a Salesforce developer. And they'll be like, oh, so you work at Salesforce? And I'm like, no, not really. Like Salesforce is a database and I do this and that. And, you know, being able to explain what you do to folks without like making their eyes glaze over is a really good skill to have, and one that is very good to practice. So definitely get involved with things at your company, get involved with things outside of your company, like volunteering things. Sometimes you can combine the two. When I was at IBM, we had a really robust volunteer program. We'd go to like the food bank and stuff. So I was able to volunteer inside and outside of work doing that. ERGs are great and often looking for leadership positions. So that's awesome and a great way to get involved in the company, and just really work on your EQ and EI, emotional quotient and emotional intelligence.
You are probably honestly the most like, I guess like people's soft skill person, like as a developer that I've ever met. And I love that so much because I'm like sitting over here laughing and like I relate to all of this. But no, that's exactly perfect. I think like even like me getting involved in like breaking the glass, which is one of our brands, like that's completely stepping out of it, but it's also like a good way to kind of bring everyone into it as well, because it does relate to tech. So yeah, I think finding like ERG groups or just anything like that's like definitely a good way to kind of get involved. Maricela, what would you like to add?
Yeah. So I think Evelyn actually brought up a super, super good point around it's very important to do that internal work and like really looking at um, where can we start investing and looking at like personal development from a perspective of like books. Are we reading books? Are we listening to the podcasts? Are we, are we getting outside support with the goals that we're trying to hit? Are we, leveraging anything that can help just level up our mindset and really just it's like doing the work that's required to get to the next level. Because you have to think of it this way. You want to do this work because when you start stepping into roles where you're taking lead, like you want to be in a you want to make sure that you're ready for that and you're ready to step into those roles where you have a little bit more self-awareness of like where your areas of opportunities are, where your strengths are. And um, I don't think they talk about this enough in corporate, to be honest, of like the importance of personal development and really making sure that you're investing in yourself when it comes to looking at different ways to just like level up your career and really leveling up like your mindset and and those pieces that go along with growth. I think the other side of it too is looking at, we a lot of times we want to put fulfillment all into like one job that we do, right? So like which company and what team or what type of job will I do that just like meets all the like fulfillment criterias for me when it comes to my professional career. And a lot of times what we end up finding out is that we're multi-dimensional human beings. We have interests in a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different ways that we can leverage those skill sets in other areas. So for example, um, you might find that you have this like creative desire to want to start a blog or want to be able to come up with like a digital product. And that maybe that's like your side business that you have in addition to your career. And like there's there are skill sets that you're exercising there that also can be translated into the role that you're in now and even like beyond that. And so just really looking at, again, it's like getting in alignment with what are some of those like creative outlets and avenues that might just not be that maybe just aren't being met in your current role. And like it's okay that not all of your fulfillment goes into your role. Like there are other ways, like maybe for you it's like teaching a yoga class like on Saturday mornings. Like like there's so many different ways to leverage skill sets around communication and management, and there's so many different ways to utilize that. Maybe it's like heading up a nonprofit, and you're like your community and you're the one that's in charge of fundraising, right? So now you're having to, fundraise funds for that. And now like that's a whole nother skill set there that, again, there's so many different opportunities, but I would encourage you to do something that is fun, something that's, something that you really do enjoy doing, and something that can be, either a creative outlet or maybe it's something that can kind of just add to that harmony with your career and like what you find fulfilling.
Evelyn, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
That was beautiful. No.
No, that was actually like such a good point with the creative outlets. I know that like one of my friends and I like are looking at like possibly starting a podcast, and like doing stuff like that allows us to kind of, I guess, like step out of the workplace and like be a little bit more creative, because that's not something I always get to do. So I think like having that outlet is a really good way to also just, I mean, well, one, put yourself out there and kind of be creative and add value in other ways, but also like such an outlet to actually like relax and kind of have fun with. that's not your day-to-day job. So yeah, no, that was an amazing point. So our last question, find your niche or finding your niche. I can't even say that word. Finding your niche is a common piece of advice for those looking to build a brand. How do you avoid trying to do it all and just focus on your specialization?
So this one for me, it was as well, I don't want to say as easy as a job change, but it was, or not as easy or simple as a job change, but for me, it did take a job change. I was kind of in my last position, I really loved, it was a great team. It was, fulfilling work. I loved the mission of the company, but I was not doing the work that I wanted to do. So I found a position where I get to write code in JavaScript and HTML, which is Lightning Web Components, and within Salesforce. And I actively sought out that position and put feelers out there. I started specializing in that direction. There is now a JavaScript certification for Salesforce, so I took that. I took my little JavaScript quiz on LinkedIn to show that I know what I'm doing. And I started tailoring my blog posts more towards that. So I intentionally set out to make this this change of direction in my career by taking on projects at my position at the time to head in that direction. I did my personal enrichment with the JavaScript certification as well as the blog posts. And then when I was able to interview for a position that focused mostly on Lightning Web Components, I was ready and prepared and able to accept that position. So it definitely find what you like to do and specialize in that direction is my advice for that.
So, and I also wanted to make sure I had more clarity on the question. Is the question around like, how do you focus, like in seasons of your career, focus on whether it should be more of a niche focus or more of a broad focus? Or is the question more around like what you should be doing tactically to have more of a niche focus and make yourself more like more attracted to employers that would be attracted to that? Like, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question so I can address it. Is that like, which one of those is it? Or is it both maybe? I don't know.
I would honestly say answer both ways because you never know which one's going to be helpful. So yeah, definitely go for that.
Okay. So first of all, I think you have to always look at like what season of career that you're in and really looking at like what season of your career that you're in. And if you are in a season where, and it goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier, if you are planning out, what you want your career to look like, maybe in a year, 12 months, 2 years, what are maybe some of the milestones you need to hit, but what are some of the skill sets that really need to be kind of rounded out to get to that goal? Are there niche teams within your current organization that you can start like raising your hand for opportunities at? Are there different resources outside of your organization, educational resources, any kind of support outside that can allow you to kind of help elevate that aspect of your skill sets? Also too, I would say that it's okay that like if you don't want to be niche though, like it's okay to be both. Like it doesn't mean that one's better or one's worse. It just like it depends on what season of your career that you're in. Like for example, I have some clients that they want to work for more of like a larger organization where they just have like a larger scope of responsibilities, and they want to dabble in a lot of different things because like their end goal is one day to like start a business, and like they want to really understand like what goes all into like running an organization, and like from a budgeting standpoint, from like running a team, like it depends on like what is like maybe the end game for you, or like what is what skill sets are you trying to round out, which can kind of determine whether you want to go more niche or if you want to go more broad. It just kind of depends. But I will say, I don't think it's like a this or that. I think in one season of your career, you can be more niche, and there's like seasons of your career where things can be a little bit more broad, and a little bit more not as deep in scope of a role, and that's okay too. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I just thought I'd share that.
It's also worth pointing out that there are some positions that are more specialized and some positions that are broader, like especially within development, like right now, in terms of like descriptors of my job, I am a full stack developer. I write the client side, I write the server side. So I write what a customer sees and I write what connects it to the database. So I have a really broad set of skills right now, but if I wanted to have a broader set of skills, eventually I am planning on being a systems architect, which means I'm going to be designing the databases and the structures that goes into this. If I wanted to narrow my scope, I could be a front-end engineer or a back-end engineer and focus just on the, just on the HTML, just on the user experience, or just on the server side. So there's a lot of opportunities, and I have seen people go more broad and more niche, again, depending on what season of their career they're in, or just what they feel like doing at the time. I've had numerous friends who have switched from very, IT support technician jobs to like cloud support technician jobs, or, cloud developers to software developers. And it really just depends on what you want to be doing. The biggest thing is that, like it was said earlier, you're spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing this. So if you want to do a little bit of everything, that is possible. If you want to specialize and get really good at something, that is also possible. So it's definitely just depends on the season that you're in your career, and there's opportunities out there for everyone.
Oh, that was perfect. Do you guys have anything else to add before we move on to answering some questions? Perfect. Okay. We're going to start going through questions. If you guys have any like other questions that you want to ask, just put them down in the chat, and we'll just kind of work our way through those. So the first one that we had, how do you speak to a gap in your resume if you took a break to care for your mental health?
So I guess my question back to that is like, what's coming up for you that you're concerned about? What are you worried about? Like, what's coming up for you? And like journaling that out on like what is the deeper fear there of like talking about it. Also too, is there a way that you can still be authentic to like the true answer, and also like tie it into what you're sharing right now with that individual, if it's like an interviewer? Like, I think too, a lot of times we think that interviewers, at least I think like, let's assume that you're in front of an interviewer, in front of a company that you truly know is like in alignment where you want to go next in your career, and like values are in alignment, things like that, like all of that stuff is there. Let's just assume that for the sake of this example. I think if you're talking to someone and you're sharing that part of your journey and your career and your story, and you're tying it into like, but what's been so great is it's given me time and an opportunity and space to really think about what I want next. And that's why like I'm here in front of you today, because this has all been part of the journey that I've been on. And being vulnerable and like willing to share that, I think that if there is an interviewer out there that would shut that down or think that that is a negative thing, I think you have to ask a deeper question on, is this even the right company that you should even be like interviewing with? And that might just be a red flag. If you can't show yourself authentically in an interview, I think that's a bigger question of like, are you going to be able to show yourself authentically at work too? And like being able to like, do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like it's you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you too, right? Like it's both ways. So I would kind of peel it back and say, like, what is it that I'm worried about? Like, what am I avoiding? And like, why, what's coming up for me around this? And am I jumping to assumptions and assuming that they're going to think that this is something negative? Right. So I think sometimes we have to ask some of those questions. I hope that answers the question that was asked.
I definitely agree with you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. And I think that you should be as honest as you are comfortable with, which you can definitely be while posing things in a positive light. Being able to, if someone is to bring up, like we said earlier, and say an 8-month gap on your resume, if you are able to say, I was really taking this time to focus on myself and realign my career trajectory, that's something that is not going to be scoffed at. That's something that people do all the time. And it's a lot more common than people think it is. So a lot of people take breaks in their career to go back to school for mental health, for physical health, to take care of an ailing parent or child. There are so many reasons that people take off of work, and it's perfectly reasonable to say that you took time off for yourself and to realign your career.
I think like also like saying it like that also like shows a lot of confidence in yourself as well, instead of like trying to kind of like, I guess, like cover it up or hide it. I think just kind of saying like, if you don't want to go into specifics and just saying like I took time off for myself to like develop and like think through like my like future goals, like I think that also shows that like one, like you're thinking about where you're heading, and like you're always trying to grow, but also like how confident you are and like saying that right off the bat instead of like kind of just beating around the bush. But then also like, yeah, it's definitely, I think, a good way to kind of see how the company like views like mental health, and if that's something that's important to them, and it's important to you, like I think that's a really good like way to find that out before you even get into the job. Let's see. Do you guys have any other points you want to add to that? Perfect. So next one, can you elaborate further on specific details that you include on a WordPress site to build your brand?
Sure, and give me just a second. I'm actually just going to share my screen here because this is going to be a little bit easier. Let's go. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, so this is my dorky little Salesforce blog. It's literally just a template WordPress website. I have not had the time or the energy to customize the HTML, but that's something that I'm planning on doing this summer. So I go into, I have my certifications, I've got my little email address. I paid $5 for a logo on some logo generation website, which is awesome. I've got a little profile picture from the Trailhead. They had like a year ago, you could generate a profile picture. And then in my bio, I have a little story about me, how I got into Salesforce development, and what I do, a little bit about what I do in my free time. So like I went to school for chemical engineering, and that's one of my favorite stories to tell. It's people love hearing that story. I dropped out because I found out I was bad at physics, but I really liked writing code. So I ended up doing software engineering instead. And I got into Salesforce by accident. I was quickly reskilled to Salesforce. I love it. It's great. It's fantastic. We're in this together is something that I have on there. And then I've got my little certs. So it basically just depends on how you want to be perceived. This is like my personal blog. I don't post like personal stuff on it, but this is my informal, like if LinkedIn is my formal portfolio, this is kind of my informal portfolio. This is where recruiters have gone to come and, find out a little bit more about me. So I was actually reached out to by my blog in one of the last positions that I had. And he reached out and was like, oh, you like fancy beers? I like fancy beers. Let's talk about it. And so it was kind of fun. So it's really just what you want to put out there about yourself. I like to put a little bit of personal flair in stuff because, that's what people are going to remember, is that little bit, that little anecdote about I'm bad at physics, but I like writing code. They're going to remember I have 3 cats and a dog. They're going to remember I like fancy beers and going out with my husband. And, it gives you something to talk about with interviewers and adds a little bit of personal flair. Obviously, the amount of personal flair you add is up to you. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have. And then in terms of content for the blog posts, a lot of what I do is like Lightning Web Components. I have some Apex code in there. So some Apex classes, Apex test classes, and right now it's mostly Lightning Web Components. I also have write-ups on 2 super badges and the JavaScript exam. So that's just some ideas of content, and I feel comfortable putting that stuff out there and knowing that it's going to be useful to someone, because like it was said earlier, people have different learning styles and different communication styles. So it doesn't matter if there's 15 other blog posts about the JavaScript exam, mine might help someone who learns the same way I do. So definitely put your own personal spin on it so it stands out. Like, there's Salesforce Ben, there's SFDC Panther, there's so many blogs that like I remember just because like I know Salesforce Ben on LinkedIn and I know Mike Wheeler on LinkedIn, and like I can tell their blogs from other blogs because I remember them and I remember interacting with them on LinkedIn, and it's a really good way to get portfolio views. So yeah.
I did not know there was a JavaScript certification now, so that's thank you for teaching me that.
It's really good.
Oh my gosh, that's a new thing I have to talk about now. But that's also, I think, a really good way, like of course, like market yourself for a job, but like that's honestly, like as a recruiter, when I like go to talk to candidates, I don't like honestly just want to talk about your work. Like I want to get to know you as a person, because that helps me do my job and finding something that like a position that I think you're gonna love. But that also I think like humanizes everything, because like some of my like candidates that I work with, like I know like so much about their life and I get life updates, and that's like what makes like me enjoy my job, is like connecting with these people. So putting like a little bit of personal things, or even just like likes, or if you like write an article, like putting that on there, that's gonna make people like notice you and like want to get to know more about you. So yeah, definitely putting that personal touch on there, I think, is a really good way to market yourself and just show your brand for sure. Maricela, did you have anything that you wanted to add with that?
I just think it reinforces the importance of what we've chatted about with storytelling. People connect through stories and through storytelling. And like even beyond this process of finding a new job, like when you start stepping into more senior, higher level roles that you're, especially when you have more of like an influence on others, like connecting your story with others is important. Because remember, if you're in a director role, a VP role, like you want to make sure your direct reports connect with you too, right? So like everything is about like what we've all chatted about today is just like storytelling, connecting, humanizing this process. It also makes it more fun and enjoyable for you too as a candidate, right? Because let's be honest, like career transitions can be a lot. And when you've got a full-time job that you're you know, if there's a lot going on there, and then you're trying to pivot into a new role, like you want this process to be as fun as possible. And I think what Evelyn actually shared on all of this today is just like, it just makes it fun. It makes it fun. It makes it authentic. It makes it fun. It makes it fun for the recruiter, for the hiring leaders, to really get to know who you are, and you stand out because it's your story. It's unique to you. You're not trying to copy anyone. You're specifically telling your story and what's unique and authentic to you. So
Perfect. I don't think that we have any more questions on here. So Elizabeth, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining our panel, and obviously to our speakers who gave us so much information. Do a little clap because we can't do it in person. I still miss that so much. I was just in a meeting today and they were like, when are we gonna have in-person events? And I was like, you know what, we need to start figuring that one out as well. But, you know, thank you to our participants. Thank you to Susan and Women in Tech Allies as well for getting to know us and having us come in and present this information. Susan, is there any last things that you wanted to add? Sign off your group?
No, it's just really great to see everyone and to hear all of the wonderful advice that we got today. This was recorded. We will find a way to actually get it out there so people can see it. I'll also copy out the chat and have that available. Usually after an event like this, I do a GitHub where I put like any extra notes or anything like that. So if the presenters have any links that they want to share or any little special notes they want to share, we'll have a place for that. And just great. Awesome. Thank you everyone for everything. Yay.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Y'all have a good night.